I don't.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call to order. It is 12 o'clock. Just a couple housekeeping items. Reminder, the meeting is being recorded. Anything said and shared during the meeting becomes a part of the permanent recording that is shared to the ADHS website. Please keep your phone or computer on mute if you're not speaking. If you're joining by phone, you will need to hit *6 to unmute yourself. I will turn it over to Shelley for roll call.
Thank you. Amber Rice.
Present.
Dan Spate.
I'm here.
Thank you, Dan. Bronco Castromarin.
Here.
Frank Walter.
Here.
Gail Bradley.
Present.
Eve Godstanker.
Present.
Jason Johnson.
Here.
Josh Gaither. Julie Augenstein. Kevin Foster. We have quorum.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone being here, and just want to say I'm going to embarrass Franco once again. It's his birthday today. Happy birthday. Appreciate you joining us for the day. Quite the way to start your birthday. So, you have birthday donuts, actually. So David Harden very kindly provided donuts for those of you who are not here. They are quite tasty. So we do have 2 vacancies. If you know anyone who would be interested or qualifies for that position, please go to the Governor's Board and Commission website to apply. We do have a couple applicants that we know are pending. Again, this is up to the Governor's boards and commissions, so hopefully we'll get at least one of those approved soon. I will do a very brief update on the FR Care Grant Program. Just a reminder that we are getting very close to go live for this. The training is live and approved, and that is updated on our Bureau website if you'd like to do this within your agency. The naloxone Leave Behind Kids should be ready to go within the next couple months. Those will include the naloxone, as well as some resource guides specific to your area, and in addition, some educational pamphlets for the individual using it and how to recognize an overdose and how to administer the naloxone. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Garcia for the Bureau report next. Okay.
Thank you, Shelley. I am going to very quickly go through some of our updates that we will share out after this, and everyone will have a copy of what is contained in the Bureau report slide updates after this meeting. A question that we have been asked to provide updates on as we have these meetings is ADHS's organizational chart. You can see here, although the font is quite small, that we currently have an acting director, Jenny Cunico, and the Bureau of EMS and Trauma System is currently stationed under the Public Health Services Division. You can see us right there, and there's a little blue star indicating our position in the org chart. And if you have any questions, please let us know. Some legislative and rule updates. We wanted to make sure we were sharing updated links of a handful of the bills that we were tracking from last session and a handful of the bills that we are tracking this session. There are still a couple EMS related bills that are pending, and we will keep EMS Council and MDC updated on any of the bills that do pass through the end of this session. We have starred several of the bills that you see captured here because they will require the department to conduct rulemaking to update ambulance certification and training rules by January 1st. As we go through the rulemaking process, our goal is always to keep our stakeholders well informed, and we have a couple more slides on opportunities for public comment. The clicker is not agreeing with me, Shelley, so I might need your help one more time. I apologize. For awareness, trauma rules, a draft of trauma rules that has been posted for stakeholder comment. There's a survey open on our website until May 21st for anybody that is interested. Next slide, please. We wanted to make sure folks know that May 11th did indicate the end of the Public Health Emergency Declaration and Title 42. I know for all of our partners and stakeholders from the Southern region, this is no surprise. And we are keeping in contact with our emergency management partners to make sure we are monitoring all the activity down south currently. Next slide, please. Big shout out goes especially to our southern region again, and many of the folks across the state that have worked on the EMS Hospital Collaborative Patient Offload Plan. We wanted to share with folks at all of our statutory committees that the work that has been done across the healthcare system on this collaborative patient offload plan has been recognized by other states. We have been sharing this information with other folks that are interested in the progress that Arizona has made on really creating efficiencies and reducing 911 out of service time. So thank you very much to everyone that continues to work on that plan. Next slide, please. May is National Trauma Awareness Month, EMS Week, as well as National Nurses Month. And so we wanted to take a moment to just recognize all the folks across the system that do such amazing work and take care of our patients across the state every single day. In the next couple slides, Shelley, if you can go through them quickly, we do have a proclamation from Governor Hobbs recognizing EMS Week from May 21st to the 27th. And we're very pleased to share that there were 4 EMCPs of the year recognized by each EMS regional council across the state, and we'll be able to share more information on those amazing folks that that deserve so much recognition as we approach EMS Recognition Day. Next up, we also have some posters throughout the department that are recognizing May as National Trauma Awareness Month. And this month's theme that is roadway safety is no accident. There's a link to a blog to share with everybody. And we want to also take a moment to recognize all of our trauma programs and hospital providers across the state that play such an important role in keeping folks safe. After we went through the EMCT of the Year awards today, we are also making sure that moving forward, we are developing a trauma recognition program, and we certainly look forward to that. Next slide, really quickly, a reminder about NEMSIS version 3.5 and AZ Peers reporting requirements as of July 1st, 2023. If time allows in the agenda, we do have some additional information that Ann Bosbrink has teed up for us, but we want to make sure that all these bullet points are shared widely with all of our air and ground agencies to get prepared for those reporting requirements, especially on the air side. Next slide. Opportunities for stakeholder input. We want to make sure folks know that there is a survey that is going out to all of our EMS and trauma providers across the state to be able to provide input. This survey will help to inform our regional and state strategic plans for the EMS and trauma system. There's also going to be some additional draft rules posted, and we'll make sure that we share those links for an opportunity for public comment. And on the agenda listed today, these are the links for ADOT 5-year construction program, and they are seeking public comment until June 1st, as well as a notice of funding opportunity for safe streets and roads for all. For any municipalities that are interested in that program, grant applications are due by July 10th, and there is an opportunity for EMS to participate in those programs. Next slides, I believe, cover share, and Dr. Bradley, I don't know if you or Julia want to jump in here.
Sure. I just want to give a quick update on share. So first of all, a big thank you to all the hospitals, cardiac receiving and referral centers. They have submitted greater than 99% of hospital outcomes for the cardiac arrest patient population for 2022, which is approximately 6,300 cardiac arrests in the state of Arizona. The University of Arizona A.R.S staff has been working with hospitals to really gather that data, and the final deadline for kind of completion of data is May 22nd. They will then convene working on the hospital reports, and the share team will be working on the EMS annual report once that's approved as well. I wanted to update the group that one transition that will be occurring historically, for those of you who have been in the system for some time, the data collection did occur within ADHS, then migrated externally to the University of Arizona AEMRC staff, and that data migration is going to come back into the ADHS umbrella, and that will be occurring at the end of June. So once we have everything set into place, we will make sure we communicate that widely, but did want to put that out there for the community as well.
Thank you, Dr. Bradley. The next few slides, we will not cover in detail, but we want to know that we want you to know that we are distributing information, especially Sebastian Thomas's contact information for naloxone leave behind, for anybody interested. The next slide has some, I believe, national registry updates as well. And for follow-up information, TJ McKay is available if there are any questions there. And I think that will take us to our EMS annual report and 911 call volume dashboard. I know we are pressed for time, Dr. Bradley, so how do you want to handle this part of the presentation?
So I think if we can, Bothell did share the PDFs. Did she share that with you as well of the snapshots? So just to kind of give everyone an update, we had discussed, I think a few meetings ago, that the Bureau was going to convert from the historical kind of PDF version of an EMS annual report to a live dashboard. Bothell is completing that dashboard and should be ready to go on the website here soon. She did present this in detail earlier today, but had a conflict that she could not attend. So we wanted to just briefly go over this to share just some of the amazing work that has been done by Bothell on this. So this is going to kind of the annual snapshot. I'm sure many of you remember this. We've been sharing these snapshots for the last few years. If you can go to the next slide.
Well, she gave them to me separately.
Oh, I see.
There's 6 different pages.
Okay. So the each of the slides, we will share these with as well. Actually, I'm not sure if we can share. We'll figure out how best to do this. But as you can see here, there's quite a wealth of information. These get into area categories of interest by county. We also have some statewide numbers. There's some response time data, scene time data, and really very well done report for those of you who didn't see her full presentation earlier. Again, this is getting close to the go live on the Bureau's website. Once this is live, we will make sure we communicate that out because really this is a wonderful opportunity for people to look into some of the data and what the EMS system looks like across the state. Bothell has also shared her 911 dashboard, which is the near real-time dashboard of call volume, which is kind of 1 week back. The question that came up at the last meeting was, where does that data come from? That is AZPeers data, so that was a very good question. So we recognize that while we have the vast majority of EMS calls within AZPeers, there's still small parts of the state that are not covered by that data set, but really recognize the extremely large volume of EMS calls that our EMS providers respond to on a daily basis. So great work by Bothell and her team, and we will make sure I know we have shared the link to the 911 dashboard. Once the EMS annual report dashboard is live, we will definitely share that so people can take the time to navigate that themselves.
Excellent work. We're really, really looking forward to sharing it. I know there's a few more slides here, but primarily we just wanted to include updated website and contact information, especially for anyone that wants to subscribe to future updates. And I know that, again, in the interest of time, we do have Alicia Castro on the line for our EMS image trend portal, and she can provide a brief synopsis if that's of interest. We could also have Leah hang out on the line if there are questions to cover later on after we make it to the agenda. Dr. Bradley, I defer to you.
I think for this committee, if Leah is able to stay on the line, if there's any questions at the end, we can circle back to that. And I do want to capture, I think there's a couple people that have joined after roll call. Dr. Augenstein, I see that you were on there. And then Dr. Foster, are you on the line by phone?
I'm on the line.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Excellent. We have captured you both for attendance. Thank you very much. All right. We will go back to our committee reports. We will start with the TEPI report.
Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
March 16th, TEPI meeting. Melissa Lexton with Banner and Arizona Fall Prevention Coalition gave a presentation on strengthening fall prevention efforts with the help of first responders. Sorry about that. Carissa Wilson explained the data request auto set age groupings. And there's some flexibility for changing the age sets when you fill in your request. Noreen Adlin shared that the rule definition for P's is children younger than 15, and as shared user group was approved. And a work group was approved to review the bylines, and that is it for me. And there's no meeting date for either of those last two.
Thank you very much. Next up, Dr. Johnson for Education Committee.
So we met on the 16th, and thanks, Shirley, for the summary. We did the naloxone leave behind program as was previously discussed. That was approved. We also approved the training for the supraglottic insertion. That we approved the training for what should go in the EPCRs, but we tabled the PACES pediatric seizure and epilepsy training, and we've approved a work group to review the bylaws, but that date has not yet been set.
Thank you. Next up, Dr. Gazer.
The PMD committee report can be very brief because every agenda item from PMD is on the agenda today. The only thing to add is that we also approved the formation of the committee to review the bylaws, which has yet to be. That's the PMD report.
All right, thank you. And then Adam for PACES.
Hello. We also formed a bylaw review work group, as well as a second work group that focuses on a grant deliverable of ours, which is standing up an EMS recognition program for pediatric recognition EMS program. And we have some educations that are about ready to debut, I suppose. We have a seizure education slide set, as well as a behavioral health educational slide set. And then next week is EMS week, and in the middle of that is EMS for Children Day. And to celebrate that, we are going to make a live link available on our website for what we're calling epic stickers. They're brightly colored stickers for pediatric information, behavioral health information that is going to be available for EMS agencies to order and distribute to their first dues for parents to make use of those. That's all I got for PACES.
All right, thank you, Adam. Next for discussion and action item, we have first, discuss, amend and approve MDC meeting minutes from January 19th. If I can get a motion and a second, please.
So,
All right, first from Josh, second from Bronco. Thank you. Those are available in your packet or online. Are there any recommended amendments? Hearing none. Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, next action item, discuss, amend, and approve the minutes from the special session on February 16th.
So moved.
All right, thank you. Frank for the first, Josh for the second. Thank you. All right, any recommended amendments? I wanted to go on record as people are reviewing that. A big thank you to this committee who spent a solid 9 hours together in this room going through the guidelines. I think it was a lot of work. I really appreciate all the effort and work from this committee. So I wanted to acknowledge everyone with a big thank you. Right. Anyone opposed to the meeting minutes, please say nay. Any abstentions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. I'm going to use a little bit of chair's prerogative and go out of order slightly, just because we did have a request at the last February 16th meeting to cover the medication utilization report. Shelley, if you can bring that up, please.
I don't have it. Is Anne available to display?
She sent it to us an email, I believe. Email? Yeah. So a little bit of background on this while we are bringing up the document. The medication report was something that the Bureau last did in 2019. And has not done since then. A very good point was raised by Dr. Spade most recently to say, as we're looking at our guidelines and discussing whether or not we should include or not include a medication, what is the frequency of the medication that's actually being used? So Anne did pull that report, and we have that for display here.
And I don't see it in my email. Do you want to display it from your computer?
Sure.
So A big thank you to Anne for working on this. I will say the one thing that is always interesting when we look at these reports from the initial one is how many medications turn up there that are not EMS medications. So recognizing that, the question is this something that someone just, clicked the wrong button? Are people actually administering these medications, which I don't think is likely occurring? Or is this a scenario where someone's potentially documented medication that was given at a facility and then it's coming up as an EMS medication? So I just wanted to put out there, this takes a ton of work to really make sure we have good, clean data for the committee to look at. So this is kind of our best product. We recognize that there's some flaws that may be in there just because of how the data comes in. So really, when your crews ask, why is this so important that we document things a certain way? When we see medications come up that are not approved for EMS and they're on there, and we see like 3 to 4 across the state per year, we recognize that this is somehow probably a documentation issue. So I wanted to give that background.
That said, Dr. Bradley, is it few enough occurrences that somebody at the Bureau could actually reach out to those agencies on a one-on-one basis? No?
So, and one of the things, AZPers we don't use in a regulatory fashion, so there's a very clear delineation. So I think that might be perceived as somewhat regulatory if we were to do that. But there's enough medications that came up that, it was just going line by line, going not EMS med, not EMS med. And so it's a pretty sizable volume. Yes, Brian?
Is that only for ground in? Because if it includes air, you're going to have medications that are administered by nurses.
So great point. This excludes nurse administration. Yep. So that includes ground and air. It excludes nurse. So it includes any level of EMCT. So EMT, AEMT, EMTI, or paramedic. Thank you for clarifying that. All right. So you can see here the medication list.
And I can pull it up in a PDF if you'd rather, but.
Can you make it bigger?
Yes.
Please.
I always forget to do that. All right. Is that?
That's better.
You sure? Okay. I feel like it's.
Can we get copies of this report, please?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Well done.
So I can just scroll through it.
I think you'll see some new medications on there that I'll kind of highlight. So since this report was run last, we did add specific over-the-counter medications for treatment of pain, so acetaminophen and ibuprofen. You'll also see that we have included cyanokit or hydroxycobalamin, so that is a new one that is on this report as well. Antibiotics are grouped together as just kind of a lump category. There is, on that report, there are a lot of different antibiotics that are administered by interfacility units that you would see. One of the questions where this came up was specifically in regards to oxytocin use, so you will see that listed with the volume. And also new since this was approved, TXA was approved and added to the drug table, so you will also see this on the list of medications as well. So definitely those are kind of the highlights of some of the new medications. But wanted to make sure that we shared this with the group. You'll also see verapamil went down to 0. So as we removed that from the drug box, so that was good that we actually saw that one, which was removed, is no longer being administered, although other ones that have never been on the drug table did make the list.
Thank you. There's a typo on the hydroxycobalamin rather than a Y in it's hydroxo with an O rather than a Y.
Oh, that was probably my programming. Sorry.
Yeah, it's no problem. It's no big deal. I'm not trying to be critical. Just noticed as it went by and get her cleaned up before it goes out to everyone.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. No, this is great work, Ann. Thanks very much.
Hey, a couple of comments from Dan here. One, yes, thanks, Ann. I know that dealing with data like this in EMS is incredibly challenging, so thank you. It must have been an enormous amount of work. So I know you don't just push a button and this falls out as a report. And then the other thing that I wanted to comment on, Gail, is, Gail, I think your intuition in, response to the, hey, can we reach out to agencies about this? And there's almost an overwhelming temptation for administratively obtained data to sometimes go out of the lane and use it for other purposes. And I think it's really, really wise that you've been very careful to not do that, because that's how Share and then Epic came about, because the agencies realized that they could share this very sensitive information potentially, and they were really confident it was never going to be used against a hospital, an agency, an individual, etc. And so I think keeping that bright line between regulatory issues and information for helping people improve the system, I really appreciate that you have been so careful about that at the Bureau.
Thank you, Dan. Yes, I think that's something that, there are times when we kind of want to almost reach out, but we realize that as a regulatory body, if we were to, that could be perceived kind of in a negative fashion. Anne does a lot of work directly with agencies as kind of the AZ Peers owner for the state to help them to improve their data. So when she recognizes that things are coming across that is something that's a coding issue, she works with them to help fix that directly. So a big thank you to Anne for this report. I know specifically the oxytocin question came up, so we can circle back to that. I will have the numbers ready when we get to that discussion under the OB guideline. Any further questions before we move on the report, on the agenda? And we will share the final version of this with the group as well. Thank you. All right, we will move back in order then to item C. If I can get a motion to discuss amended approved clarification of the T3G for bradycardia.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so Frank for the first, Franco for a second. So this is something, as Shelley and I were going through the final kind of updates and edits from the joint meeting in February, as well as the meeting for PMD, we realized that there was something that was potentially a typo. So we worked with Dr. Rice, thank you, to clarify that. I wanted to highlight what we have fixed to that, if we can make that a little bigger, please. So first, under the bradycardia, we wanted to just point out there, you can see highlighted in yellow. And back down. There we go. Kind of the indication. So in case of impending hemodynamic collapse, proceed directly to transcutaneous pacing. So we had hemodynamic, we had arrest. And so the question was, it read as if you were shocking cardiac, or you were pacing cardiac arrest. And so the recommended update to that verbiage is, in cases of impending hemodynamic collapse, in parentheses, shock, proceed directly to transcutaneous pacing. So that is the recommended edit to that one. There is someone off mute. If you could please make sure you're on mute, we would appreciate it.
Is there any reason for the need for the parenthetical statement, or is it clear enough in case of impending hemodynamic collapse, proceed directly to transcutaneous pacing?
I think the request from the group was just to have that in there, and I think it helps clarify it for the EMS provider in the field.
And I'm okay with that. I was just thinking of simplicity, and obviously this is a setting of bradycardia.
And then the next part under the
I like that, Frank. I kind of like that hint for the average provider out there. I think it's helpful. I like the verbiage.
Okay, yeah, and I'm fine with that. Just a thought.
Thank you. And then next up on the pediatric side for bradycardia, we realized that we had copied Nasemsa, which was, I think, an error on Nasemsa side, the push dose epidosing, as opposed to the PALS dosing for the epinephrine for bradycardia. So we wanted to make sure we clarified that. So that was updated as well. So those are just two kind of little small edits that we had caught as we were going through those. So that is the update for the bradycardia slide. All
Yeah. Getting it.
right, so we just need to take a vote on that. Anyone opposed to the updates, please say nay. Any abstentions? All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, next one, please don't make a voodoo doll with my name on it. After this, I know we spent a long time on this guideline, but if we can get a motion to discuss and amend and approve formation of clarification of the T3G for traumatic cardiac arrest, termination of resuscitation.
Second.
First and foremost, second from Jason, thank you. So as Shelley and I were going through the meeting minutes, which by the way are on YouTube, and we went through quite a bit of that to clarify some of our discussion that happened at that meeting, we realized that we wanted to make sure we were very clear on what this should read. So as we read through this, some of the notes that we had in the Google document from the meeting didn't match the actual recording of what we discussed in the room. A lot of this we went back and forth several times. So you will see highlighted here what we think was what the committee wanted. So for termination resuscitation for penetrating trauma, it would say consider transport to highest level trauma center if time less than 15 minutes from time of loss of pulses. And under blunt trauma, if patient arrests with EMS on scene, consider bilateral needle thoracostomy for potential tension pneumothorax and treatment of suspected airway obstruction with OPA/MPA. We took out the next line, and then the third bullet was unchanged. And then the bottom, we just wanted to know, do we need to have that highlighted yellow line? It seems like it may be a little bit confusing. So I will kind of take each one first. So for the penetrating trauma, is the group okay with us scratching the cardiac arrest and just having it read with time of loss of pulses?
Yeah.
I see 3 head nods in the room.
I'm okay with that.
All right, thank you. All right, moving to blunt trauma. Listening to all the back and forth, it sounded like the recommendation was to consider. If you state just perform, it is an instructive that they would have to essentially do that in all cases. So consider it versus perform.
Well, my follow-up question is, are we considering only the act of the needle thoracostomy, or are we considering that action as well as considering suspected airway obstruction? Because I would argue that we should consider the thoracostomy, but perform the airway obstruction.
I had a similar thought in the English, consider a noun, bilateral needle thoracostomy, and I almost would say, and treat suspected airway obstruction with OPA and NPA, and I would put that first if it hasn't happened already.
So we could flip the order and have it read, if patient arrests with EMS on scene, treat suspected airway obstruction with OPA/MPA, and
Yes.
consider bilateral needle thoracostomy for potential pneumothorax.
Agreed.
Sounds good.
Just play devil's advocate. If you have a clearly dead person, do we want to put an OPA and NPA in every one of those patients?
So if we have patients, so we did change the top inclusion. So I think this was one where we changed a lot of this was kind of a withholding and termination now. So if they fall under the withholding, you wouldn't go down to this part of it. So at the top, you have under EMT, maybe withheld, with bound, aptic, and pulseless under EMT. So this is really if the patient arrests with EMS on scene.
Oh, okay, yeah, I agree.
Okay. We spent a lot of that. No, we spent a lot of time in this, and it really hurt my soul to have to bring it back for clarification, but I felt that I needed to. All right, so the updated version would read, if patient arrests with EMS on scene, treat suspected airway obstruction with OPA/MPA, and consider bilateral needle thoracostomy for potential tension pneumothorax. And then period, and the rest be struck. Shelley? Yep. Thank you. And then the last clarification on that one was to contact online medical direction. I don't think we need any longer if patient does not meet all termination criteria, because we've really kind of gotten rid of that. But I wanted to make sure the group was good with me without striking that highlighted bullet. So essentially it would be contact online medical direction to patients less than 14 or other special circumstances throughout the resuscitation. I see 3 nods in the room. I see a hand up online from Dr. Cooper.
Oh, thanks. Just a question. Using the same guidelines for termination of resuscitation, do we want to incorporate some time interval if the patient arrests in the ambulance? If you're still half an hour away from the hospital, the transport could be more dangerous to the community and the providers than it will be in improving the patient outcome.
So we have not included that in the guidelines for a couple reasons, just because what we hear consistently from agencies is if they terminate someone in an ambulance, the ambulance is out of service until a medical examiner gets there, which now puts that ambulance and crew out of service for potentially 6 to 8 hours. So certainly there would be the opportunities to contact online medical direction, downgrade a code 2 transport for safety, things along those lines. But I think that is the feedback we've gotten. Is certainly the out of service time for that unit and the personnel.
No, that makes sense if they can downgrade the care. That's good. Thank you.
I think that's where we came up with the special circumstances, so that way it gives you some leeway.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a thought on the wording for the bottom bullet. A suggestion would be contact online medical direction when patient is less than 14 years old or other special circumstances. I don't think we need, yeah, and I put the when, maybe after direction, yeah. And then, or between those, because we don't mean and like a Boolean operator. Is that comfortable for everyone?
Yes, thank you. All right.
Frank, I just had to say a meeting isn't complete without having the word Boolean in it. So great work, bud.
Thanks for being a great operator.
Boolean.
All right. Any further discussion on this guideline update? All right. Hearing none. Anyone opposed to the update to the traumatic termination of resuscitation or cardiac arrest guideline? Please say nay. Any abstentions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Excellent. All right.
Great work, Gail. Hey, since that hurt your soul to bring that back, we'll light a candle for you.
Thank you.
You know a good minister, Dan?
A lot.
I know.
All right, so next is the childbirth guideline. So this took some definite creative font work to get this to all fit. But if we go to the bottom, oh, sorry, I guess we should take a motion first. All right, can I get a motion to discuss and approve information of the work group? I take first from Franco, second from Jason. All right, so for this guideline, there was a request to include TXA and oxytocin for postpartum hemorrhage, and then also the clarification of the verbiage regarding the magnesium that was discussed from PMD. So that is all at the bottom. We might need to make that a little bit bigger for those in the room. I have finally learned you can expand something in your iPad, so I can expand my own. All right.
All my options are 100% or 200%.
All right. Well, hopefully everyone can see this or has it in your packet if you're in the room. So, so the request was to have postpartum hemorrhage was to include TXA. So you can see that that has been included here, a specification for paramedic only. And then there was also a request for oxytocin. There was quite a bit of debate back and forth, which led to the question from Dr. Spade, how often is this being administered in the state? And so we do have that number that is in the medication report. So for 2020, there were 12 administrations, 2021, 10 administrations, and in 2022, there were 22 administrations. Keep in mind that this includes both 911 and interfacility. So that includes both interfacility and 911, but should be, and also air units too. So it includes air, interfacility, 911, excluding RN administration. So pretty low volume on there, but did want to put that up there as the group had wanted that information prior to voting on whether or not to include oxytocin.
I'm okay with it.
I don't think it hurts anything not to use it.
I heard 2 yeses and a shoulder shrug from Josh.
I'm also neutral on that.
Anyone on the line with any thoughts or input on this?
I think there are some people who battle big over this, so I don't think it matters that much. It is a good example of, we have almost no information in the state. We have very limited information in the literature, and so we've tended on this group to be permissive. So if we're going to keep being permissive, then I guess it's okay. I second Josh's shoulder shrug.
We had 3 shoulder shrugs and and 2 affirmatives. All right, so and just to note for the group, we do have at the bottom for the magnesium dosing. We also clarified for seizure prophylaxis, seizure management, so a little bit different dosing in terms of time intervals, as well as the actual dose for administration of that. And then the hyperlink to seizures itself. And then on the next page, which is the OBGYN condition guideline, this one, again, we had the same verbiage at the bottom as well.
Can we go back to the previous slide? I noticed something flash by. I saw McRoberts rule.
There's
Or
McRoberts.
McRoberts maneuver. Okay, great. No problem. Thank you.
Any further discussion about these 2 guidelines? Go ahead and move to a vote on those. If there's anyone opposed to the 2 OB guidelines as displayed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Next, if we can get a motion to discuss, amend, and approve draft updates for the T3Gs for appendix and preface pages.
So moved.
Frank, Franklin?
All right. I don't think we had any changes to the disclaimer. So a big update. Thank you, Shelley, for updating the table of contents. Next, the table of contents is broken into sections now to make it for ease of use. The abnormal vital signs, GCS. We had previously, as part of the stroke discussion, we had clarified the pre-hospital stroke screening scale. Have the screening scale versus the screening tool for LVO. Push dose epi. There was also a request to move the needle decompression procedure to the appendix section. So this was moved here as well. And then we made some updates to the needle language that was in that. There were no changes to the drip calculations. The blood center list, we did update this. Thank you to Dr. O'Connor, who helped delete some meds that are no longer in production from our old list. So we have cleaned that up a little bit. You did not make any changes to the ECG changes in hyperkalemia. The guidelines for field triage was the national guideline that we adopted. Pediatric pain scores, no changes to that. The cardiac receiving and referral centers has been updated based on the most recent list. The Bureau will make sure that we keep up to date on that if any centers change their status. So kind of minimal updates to this outside of a lot of work on Kelly's part.
And our volunteers on there.
Any further discussion on those pages?
Just wanted to clarify that these are the standard triage treatment and transport guidelines and aren't for disasters or crises, things like that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Hearing no further discussion, anyone opposed to these appendices and preface pages, please say nay. Any abstentions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right, next, if I can get a motion to discuss amend and approve draft updates for a drug profile for ibuprofen.
So moved.
All right, and first, Josh, second Franco in the room. A big thank you to Brian Smith for creating this and Dr. O'Connor for doing quite a bit of toxicology and pharmacology wordsmithing for us. So again, these are two new drug profiles, recognizing that these have been added to the drug table as options. And we did see these on our medication list. Any recommended amendments?
Just one, yes. Where it says that ibuprofen is a stronger anti-inflammatory than acetaminophen. Acetaminophen is not really an anti-inflammatory drug.
You recommend we strike that line?
Yeah, we could strike it or just say ibuprofen is anti-inflammatory if you want it.
We do have that under the pharmacology and actions. We have the anti-inflammatory effect.
Yeah, that's fine then, just strike it.
Okay.
Agreed.
Thank you. Any other recommendations? All right, hearing none. Anyone opposed? Please say nay. Any abstentions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye. Thanks for striking it.
Next, if we can get a motion to discuss, amend, and approve draft updates for a drug profile for acetaminophen. Thank you, Jason. For the first, Josh for the second. Any recommended amendments for this one? Hearing none. Anyone opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. A big thank you again to everyone who participated in this update to the TTGs. This is officially our final approval of the document before we can go live. And really a huge thank you to Shelley. all the discussions that we have, that 9-hour meeting plus all the others results in a lot more work behind the scenes for Shelley to collate all those changes and put that into the document. So a really big thank you and recognition to Shelley for all that work.
No, I'll try to get it up on the website tomorrow and today.
Yes. So big thank you to the committee and to Shelley for all the work on that. I am going to go a little bit out of order again here and cover the trauma triage guideline update. And if you could kind of briefly cover that. I know that some of this committee has heard this in the last two, but just did want to make sure that we highlight this.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Good. Now I can say good afternoon, everybody, instead of good morning. So I want to make sure to cover it a little bit just in case someone hasn't heard this already twice before. But as you all know, we are going to a new version for data collection for EPCRs. We're going to version 3.5, which all the agencies need to switch to by July 1st of this year. We're currently on 3.4. And one of the things in 3.5, although it doesn't currently have the ability to collect the 2021 guidelines, as opposed to the current 2011 guidelines, there is a hot fix that was put out, kind of like a patch, and NEMSIS has that available for EPCR vendors, and they can apply it. It is for 3.5, so it's not a patch that will apply to 3.6. That will allow the agencies, EMS agencies, to collect the updated trauma triage guidelines. And this sheet here that Shelley is showing, the first page is, there's two data elements that kind of represent the trauma triage guidelines now and after 3.5, and they're E-injury 03 and E-injury 04. And the first page is E-injury 03, the second page is E-injury 04. And in the actions column in the middle, it just explains with what is on the right-hand side is the 2011 older codes and older labels. And on the left is the 2021 updated labels and codes. And the action, like if there's no change or you need to map or use instead the one on the left. Shelley, could you go down? I can't remember what the next ones say. I believe there's some new values that didn't exist in 3.4, so they will be in 3.5 with the patch applied, and then just some label updates. And that's it. So I would say EMS agencies should check with their vendor when they go to 3.5 to make sure that this ability to record the new trauma triage guidelines is available to them.
Thank you. And I know so many of you were at the last two meetings, but I think the importance of this for the medical directors and for the EMS agencies is recognizing that the state has put a lot of work into adopting the updated ACS field triage guidelines. And so we've put the education committee created education, which has gone out statewide. Currently, if you were to have implemented that training, there's no way for your personnel to actually document those activation criteria. So this is the fix from NEMSIS to allow EMS agencies to now document the updated trauma triage algorithm in their EPCR. So hopefully we will see some transition. I realize that the fact that these two programs kind of came out simultaneously and didn't come out fixed with one another up front means that we'll probably have a little bit of a delay before we see this go live. But this should hopefully align the data with what we're asking EMS providers to use for trauma activation criteria moving forward. Any questions for Ann on this? And next up for the NEMSIS version 3.5 change summary, I know Ann has covered this in the last two meetings. She has kind of a brief summary as well as a more in-depth summary for your agencies if you're interested. If you'd like to get into the nitty-gritty of your EPCR systems, this is certainly available for you to look at as well. So that is available. Again, Ann is your subject matter expert, so please feel free to reach out to her or have someone within your agency reach out to her. And I think we can probably hold for this group going through all this, but maybe if you could show them where on the website
Absolutely.
you can find that. And then I see Dr. Rice has raised a hand.
Okay. So the summary presentation is just a couple slides, and I go through some of the changes. If you guys haven't seen it, there is that plus much more available on our public-facing website under the ADHS. If you go under Data Quality Assurance, AZ Peers, there's a tab called 3.5 transition information and resources. There's a ton of information here, but right here, the one that says V35 key changes 2023 is a much longer presentation with all of the details of the value changes and things that are relevant to the AZ peers changes for 3.5. So.
Amber, did you have a question? Nope, I accidentally hit the button. Okay. All right. Thank you, Anne. Last on the agenda, we had ground level fall hip fracture data. I know, I don't know, is Carissa on the line? Otherwise, I can go through this data. Hip injury. Correct, yes. So this is data that has been shared at a couple of the committees. So this might be a repeat for some of you, but there have been an ask to look at our ground level fall with hip fracture data. When we looked at our hip fractures in our trauma annual report, that patient population seemed very small because it's very specific to patients transported to a trauma center. We recognize throughout the state, especially in the large urban areas, that many of these patients will go to a community hospital that has no trauma level designation associated with them. And so when you look at the actual trauma, the numbers, you can see here the vast majority of ground level falls with associated hip fracture go to a non-trauma center, so 92%. About just under 8% go to a trauma center. If you can scroll down a little bit further, here you can see, sorry, back up, yes. That's okay. Just kind of the combined data at the top, and then you can see, again, just the vast volume difference when you look at patients who go to a trauma versus a non-trauma center. This is a breakdown at, based on age, and looking at age, breakdown of what percent go to trauma center versus a non-trauma center, kind of broken down in that section there, next section. And then length of stay based on patients admitted, discharged, and looking at their length of stay for a trauma center versus a non-trauma center. And then this one looks at if they did go to a trauma center. So this is, again, our smaller data set. So if they were transported to a trauma center, what percent went to level 1? You can see here the vast majority of patients, if they went to a trauma center with fall and hip fracture, they went to a level 1 based on the assumption that they likely had a higher injury score associated. And this is just a breakdown by gender for trauma versus non-trauma centers. And then looking at the regions and their associated data, recognizing obviously largest patient population in the state, live in the central region, and seeing the breakdown based on that. And then at the bottom, looking at where the patients went, so trauma versus non-trauma centers, what was their discharge location, so acute care, SNF, long-term care, hospice expired, etc. So really, I'm not doing justice to the report that I've also created. I think one of the discussion pieces that came up at staff this morning, for those of you that were not here, was just the vast volume that we see. We're looking at approximately 200,000 patients with ground level fall with associated hip fractures. We recognize this patient population has a really high morbidity and mortality. And the ask from staff was, what can be done? It's kind of injury prevention for this patient population. And so really want to make sure we kind of talk about this in this group. Education committee had tabled that as a topic for education moving forward, but we may end up circling back because that was an ask from the staff group as what can be done for potential injury prevention for this patient population. I do see Dr. Cooper, your question there. Let me bring that up. Is there a difference? I don't think we have that data. So the question from Dr. Cooper, for those of you who are not seeing the chat, is there a difference in cost and outcomes for patients with hip injury at a trauma versus non-trauma center? I don't believe we have that data because we only have trauma center data. So we don't have the cost data from non-trauma centers, although Vauxhall may contradict me, but I'm pretty certain on that piece. I don't think I've ever seen any cost data for our EMS data set, only for our trauma patient data set. Chief Garcia is saying correct, so. So no, we do not have a difference in that. The other thing that we saw from Vauxhall, who did a much better job describing this, is that really the patients who go to a trauma center are likely more injured, as the higher majority went to a level 1 trauma center. And so it's probably not an apples to apples comparison when you look at those patient populations from a cost perspective, even if we did have that data. Yes, Brian.
So how do you break down people who are just fortuitously going to a level 1 trauma center because that's the closest versus there was a decision to go to that based on anything else? There's really no way to do that, is there?
The question is whether or not they consider them a trauma. So not all, and that's been a big debate of like, depending on where the fracture is in the hip joint, depends on whether or not they actually fall into the data dictionary for trauma. That's probably the best summary. As the non-data expert, if Carissa or Vauxhall wants, they can clarify that. But I know that at the trauma registry users group, there's quite a bit of discussion of what type of hip injuries. So some level 4s will activate all ground level fault hip fractures, but it's not a mandatory. So most level 1 facilities, those would not be a trauma activation, and that wouldn't fall under their quote unquote trauma population. So I think I would probably have to have Carissa answer that more specifically, just because she is the expert as to what falls under that bucket. She's not now. I'd like to see. That's my best answer, Brian, but I think she could give a more succinct one than what I gave. I just wanted to highlight that. I think, we asked our EMS providers to provide us with a large volume of data. We also asked our hospitals to provide quite a bit of data. We are very fortunate that Vauxhall and her team have been able to link the data from the hospital discharge database, which is where we gather a lot of this non-trauma data, as well as ASTR and AZPR's data. But what can we do with that data? If we know that we have this volume, are there things that we can do to improve outcomes across the state? And so that's kind of the next step we'd like to do with this. Any further discussion? Well, I went very out of order. I was quite concerned that we would not get to our T3G update. So next, are there any agenda items to be considered for the next meeting? If you have any items, please feel free to forward those to either myself or Shelley. Next, call to the public. All right, upcoming events. There are a large number of events coming up. If you're interested, please visit the Bureau's website. There's a hyperlink in the agenda packet for that. Our next meeting will be September 21st at 12 p.m. Hopefully here in the same room once again. If I can get a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
No.